guys, it's Bunnymon and welcome to today's video and welcome to another WWE reaction. Today's video is recommended by Benjamin Pennington and he said you must check out why the Fabulous Moolah was the most hated woman in wrestling by Stunned by Wrestling. You will not be disappointed. Also, you can tell this video is old because it doesn't include Trish from her run this year in her feud with Becky Lynch. I mean, this video is 1 year ago, and of course, if a wrestler is still active and they didn't go and retire, there must be a story or two to be told still. But yeah, I will go and react to this video. Thanks so much for recommending the video to me. And guys, if you wanna check out more videos, maybe even this video will be on my Patreon because I don't know if it's gonna be copyrighted or not, but if so, then you can check it out on patreon.com/supportbunny. And if you're watching this on video, thanks so much for being part of my Patreon. Alright, let's go and watch this video, shall we?
For wrestling fans of a certain age, any mention of the Fabulous Moolah will trigger fond memories of the Attitude Era and the crass, often hilarious tag team between Moolah and Mae Young. They were a couple of elder stateswomen of pro wrestling's bygone era. In my teenage mind, they must have existed in the dark ages before WrestleMania 1, which was as early as my knowledge of American wrestling ever went. I knew that Moolah was with Leilani Kai in her match against Wendi Richter at the inaugural WrestleMania, but that was it. Anything before 1984 wasn't available on VHS, and so I had no frame of reference about wrestling in that era. WWE did little to explain the cultural impacts of either Young or Moolah, as they provided funny and shocking.
Do they have maybe like some type of a documentary or something where they are talking about their life, or a book or something? Like, I want to know more, especially back in the day. These are things that we would be interested in seeing, how she became a wrestler, her early age and stuff. Like,
moments during the Attitude Era, such as when Mae Young was powerbombed by Bubba Ray Dudley through a table at the age of 77, and when the Fabulous Moolah won the Women's Championship at the age of 76. Many of us didn't know their histories, and in the case of the Fabulous Moolah, there were some aspects of her real-life history that very few people knew about. Dark, criminal parts of her history that she managed to keep under lock and key until the day
maybe
that
that's
she
why
died.
she's not writing a book. She died? She hurt me anytime she could, and I realized that early on she was an evil person and I didn't ever want to be around her. Wendi Richter. Or Richter. Oh my god, it's so loud, it's turning. Oh! The Fabulous Moolah, wrestling's most disgraceful woman.
The Fabulous Moolah was born as Lillian Ellison in 1923. Her mother passed away young at the age of just 40 years old. Moolah's father tried to take her mind off the death of her mother by taking her to wrestling matches. Moolah saw female wrestling legend Mildred Burke and was inspired to become a wrestler herself.
It's Mildred Burke of Los Angeles, California, world champion.
In the 1940s, Moolah joined the wrestling business under the tutelage of Mildred Burke and her husband, Billy Wolfe. Very quickly, the inner workings of the business became clear to Moolah as she witnessed Wolfe run his world of women's wrestling as a kind of cartel, as he pimped out his girls to other promoters for sexual favours in return for favourable booking. It was also expected that the girls...
Wait. Am I reading this right? Slave girl Moolah? What?
School would gratify him sexually. Moolah decided that she didn't want any part of being pimped herself. Unhappy with her rejection, Wolfe told Moolah that she was too small to wrestle anyway and should go and be a secretary instead. Moolah's hopes to become a wrestler were almost scuppered there and then, as so few promoters at the time saw the value in promoting women. It appeared it was either Wolfe's way or the highway. On Wolfe, Moolah would later say, "To my way of thinking, he was a despicable human being. Even so, I knew I had to deal with him, at least at first, to realise my dream." Moolah eventually broke away from Wolf and met her future husband, the wrestler Buddy Lee. They both moved down to Columbia, South Carolina, and opened their own trading ground after making a deal with a local promoter to use their talent. There were early signs of the character that Moolah would become, as her only daughter, Mary Carroll, brought charges of neglect against her mother for forcing her to wrestle while she was unwell as a 15-year-old teenager.
15.
The relationship between Moolah and Buddy Lee was rocky, full of passion. It was half business partnership and half tumultuous love affair. Shockingly, despite all of her prior complaints, Moolah would allegedly use the same tactics employed by Mildred Burke and Billy Wolf when running her own school. She readily admitted to taking the ring name Moolah.
Like, literally, you hate on something and then you go on and you do the same thing? Explain that to me.
Thanks to her preoccupation with making lots of money, and both she and Lee were utterly cutthroat in the way they ran their business and the way they treated the women who were learning from them. Moolah and Buddy Lee took all of the bookings for their stable of women and made sure to skim a handsome percentage off the top for themselves. The exact fee would vary. None of the girls knew exactly what they'd been paid by a promoter on any given night, and some speculated that as much as 50% of their earnings were taken by Moolah and Lee.
Like
with all of the money being made by scraping the girls' pay packets, the school expanded in no time, starting out with Moolah training the women on mattresses on the kitchen floor of a tiny house, before growing into an entire compound with its own gym and full-sized wrestling ring. One of the most disturbing allegations to come out of Moolah's school was that of Sweet Georgia Brown, real name Susie Mae McCoy, one of the first African-American female wrestlers. McCoy was trained in her early 20s by Moolah. McCoy wanted to provide a better life for herself and her 12 siblings at home, but in the end, her life was robbed of everything by Moolah and Buddy Lee.
What did you do?
McCoy had huge potential, massive natural talent in the ring, and Buddy Lee saw huge potential in her. He looked to promote so-called Negro ladies.
Oh my god, back in the day, saying stuff like this was completely normal.
Wrestlers, which was black on black female grapplers, a curiosity for fans at a time when segregation was still in effect. As Buddy Lee signed McCoy up to a contract, she left her family behind in Columbia, South Carolina. That included her siblings and her only child at the time, a 2-year-old boy, as she went on the road. McCoy's life would change forever for the worse as she left her family behind and entered the clutches of Moolah and Buddy Lee. In an interview, her son Michael recounted, "Every time my mother went on the road, she'd come back pregnant. One of my aunties said, every time you come back home, you come back with one of these half and half white kids, and we got mistreated for years growing up because of our colour. Within their own home, the children were abused by relatives and called half-breeds, forced to sleep in a closet, while their cousins slept in proper beds." Michael himself was one of those mixed-race children conceived by McCoy while she was away from home with Moolah and Buddy Lee, and he speculated amongst those children, now adults, that their father was more than likely Buddy Lee himself, who raped their mother on a regular basis. In return, Buddy Lee wrote dynamic, praise-filled promo pieces for his unique attraction, sent into newspapers and television stations across the region. Lee described McCoy as 145 pounds of ebony beauty who left the cotton fields of South Carolina. He wrote that there would be no more pots and pans for Georgia and no more long hours in the South's tobacco and cotton fields. He went on to say that she was a credit to her race, who was now enjoying the pleasures and luxuries that money earned by being a girl wrestler could bring. A disgusting and exploitative way of describing another human being, if ever there was one. The newspaper pieces were signed off another top attraction from Buddy Lee Promotions. Heartbreakingly, McKay would later disclose to her daughter Barbara that while she was living with Moolah and Buddy Lee, she was raped and forced to take drugs until she was addicted. Moolah would only leave Buddy Lee when she found him in their bed with one of the girls. Moolah threw him out and some of the girls, including Susie Mae McCoy, left with him.
Oh, okay. She didn't know. I didn't know that you didn't know.
Moolah had
So I
grown
said
to become wrestling's most powerful woman in a business that was already tough to crack. Moolah stood as the gatekeeper to the entire women's industry. Moolah charged her trainees up to $300 rent per month and reportedly skimmed 50% off their pay from the shows they wrestled on. Eventually, Moolah's school had grown to become a 40-acre live-in compound, where the girls were taught by Moolah, lived on Moolah's property, and in some cases were pimped out by Moolah. Janine Meerset wrestled in the 1980s and was trained by the Fabulous Moolah. Don't call her a madame, it sounds too elegant. She was a pimp. It was a symptom of her need to make money at all costs. She was raised very poor. She vowed never to be poor again. In hindsight, we can see that Moolah used all of the same techniques as human traffickers. Moolah's workers were forced to live in the house that was owned by her. All of her workers' pay had to go through her, and she sexually exploited them. Meerset went on to recount how Moolah would send girls out to a friend to model for photos. I talked to the guy on the phone. He implied he would expect certain things from me. I said no. Luna Vachon also independently backed this up in a 2002 interview, claiming that when she was just 16 years old and training at Moolah's compound, she was sent out of state to be photographed by an old man. Sandy Parker was a lesbian trainee of Moolah's who has since claimed that Moolah forbade her from visiting gay bars or having same-sex relationships with other women. Parker was enraged when Moolah tried to force her into dating men, especially considering that Moolah was also allegedly engaging in sex with other women at the time. Another of Moolah's trainees was Vicky Otis. Before Otis got to Moolah's training ground, she'd already learned how to wrestle. However, her local promoter was
honestly, like watching this whole video and listening how women have been treated, and no wonder feminism became a thing. Now feminism is a bit too far, especially in the West, but this is literally the sole reason it was created. This is so sad what women had to go through in order to just make a career and earn money. And even when they did, that money was not theirs. And a lot of times these are women with kids, not by choice, and they have to take care of their kids, so they have to do whatever it is possible. So sad.
Hard time booking his talent onto cards, thanks to Moolah's stranglehold on the business at the time. The promoter told Otis that he'd no other choice but to reluctantly send her to Moolah. Her reputation preceded her. She said, "I still remember a friend of mine telling me, don't go to Moolah's, find a job, get on your feet, just don't go to Moolah's. I was warned, but I just wanted to wrestle so bad." Otis recalled arriving at Moolah's compound and noticing the huge gates surrounding the property. After dark, if you weren't home and you weren't working, you got locked out. Otis recalled breaking her neck during a match in 1984. After a few days in the hospital with a neck brace, Otis was taken back to Moolah's compound. Moolah made Otis take bumps in the ring to test her. After a couple of months, Moolah realised the extent of Otis's injury and the fact that she would not be able to pay up for her rent. Moolah tried to pimp Otis out to a promoter so she could pay her rent and her school fees. Moolah looked at me and said, "The nicer you are to him, the nicer he'll be to you. What else can I say?" When Otis refused the advances of the promoter, Moolah became extremely angry, knowing that she couldn't make any money out of her. "She dumped me and I never wrestled again." According to Otis, Moolah lied to the other women at the compound and told them that Otis had been sent to prison for dealing cocaine. Moolah couldn't let the other girls know that Otis had broken her neck and was no longer used to her going forward, as that would have revealed her true motives. Moolah held her iron-like grip on the women's wrestling industry, not only at her school, but also in the ring. She held on to the women's championship as if her life depended on it. This created a glass ceiling for the very women she was training. Moolah had control of her part of the business from the top to the bottom. However, Wendi Richter almost managed to smash through that ceiling. In the mid-1980s, Vince McMahon could see the potential in women's wrestling and started to build his roster of female talent. Richter quickly emerged as one of the best, most charismatic women of the bunch, and there was immediate jealousy from Moolah towards the young, hot upstart. Moolah was advancing in age, and she could see the advancing threat from the better-looking, more talented woman. With Vince McMahon actively looking to expand the women's scene, Moolah wondered how long she could stay on top of the female part of the business, both on screen and behind the scenes. McMahon had a vision of making Wendi Richter the female version of Hulk Hogan. Even Moolah had never reached those heights. Richter told McMahon that she didn't want to live with Moolah any longer, and she certainly didn't want her paycheck going to her. McMahon agreed to pay her directly, and Moolah was furious. The wrestling boom of the 1980s exploded as WWE converged with pop culture. Cyndi Lauper came on board and sided with Richter as a manager for a WrestleMania match against Leilani Kai. Kai had Moolah on her side. Thanks to exposure from Lauper, Richter entered the mainstream as she appeared on MTV and in WWE's very popular cartoon series. For a time, Richter was the most famous women's wrestler in the world. Richter won the WrestleMania match and the Women's Championship, and despite still having to feud with Moolah for the rest of the year, it felt as though the women's revolution had started. One thing that hadn't changed, however, was pay. Richter wanted more money considering that she was the Women's Champion, but McMahon had other ideas. On November the 25th, 1985, Richter was booked in a match against the Spider, an unspecified masked woman. Richter immediately knew that it was Moolah under the mask. All I knew was, with Moolah, I've got to look out for myself, Richter said in an interview. She'll try to hurt you, she'll try to pin you, and I knew she couldn't pin me. She couldn't, but what I didn't count on was the referee getting paid off. In what would be the original script,
man. It's like when evil people are in the shadows and doing their thing. Like, no matter how good you are, they can screw you over because they have their own agenda. It's a monopoly. They're holding it. They have the power. And it's even today. It's the same. It's if not worse, you guys. If not worse. It's who you know, how you do that. Oh my God, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
New job. Moolah rolled Richter into a small package. Richter kicked out at 1, but the referee counted 3, and with that, Moolah was once again women's champion. And the women's revolution was finished. It would be decades before women's wrestling would be taken seriously again by WWE. Wendi Richter was essentially blackballed from wrestling, and she wouldn't return to WWE until 2010, when she was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Mary Lillian Ellison died aged 84 in November 2007, but it would be many years before her alleged history was exposed to the masses. When WWE decided to introduce a women's battle royal at WrestleMania in 2018, named after the Fabulous Moolah, there was outrage. All of this history was turned over, laid bare for the first time. WWE had tried to put their spin on Moolah as being a trailblazer for women's equality in wrestling. However, the allegations against her said otherwise. Pressure from sponsors and mainstream journalists forced WWE to drop the tribute. If all of those allegations are true, then Moolah held back the evolution of women's wrestling for literally decades, and it wouldn't be until years after her death that women's wrestling would be looked upon again with any respect at all.
Oh my God, it's lit. Honestly, history, his story. Fly, please let me speak. Why you wanna like? Thank you. And every time I start talking to the fly, it runs away and hides behind my ring. As if like it knows. It understands me. Now we have a relationship because like we're friends now, I guess. I spend more time with you these days than anyone else. Okay, back to this. Like, as I said, it's his story and you never know the true story. You could be like celebrating some person because you only know what the news have been saying about them, what other people have been saying about them, but you didn't live during that time and you have no idea the actual truth behind it. Oh my god, it's like how we perceive people, but it doesn't mean that how we perceive them is who they truly are. And that is kind of really crazy because they can impersonate one persona and like act a certain way just to manipulate you. And if they are really good manipulators, it's very difficult to figure it out. Like, you have to spend a lot of time with them, examine them, test them in order to see their true self. Some people know how to hide it very well, so be careful out there. But that is it, guys, for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Liking the video is so important. I have zero monopoly in this world. All right, I am a Bosnian girl. I was the first one in my hometown to open a YouTube channel. All I have done, I've done by myself. I had no support, no help, and I need your help. Please like this video and recommend it to other people. Let's try to make this channel bigger and more successful without this monopoly of all the people. And all these people, like, if you know someone, you can get famous and blah, 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 blah. I don't need anyone. I need you, though. I need you guys and only you, because the power is in the people. Together, unite, and like this video. I don't think anyone asked for a like more than me right now. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I love your faces. Subscribe for more as well, you guys, because there's so much more WWE content. A wonderful day, and see you tomorrow with a brand new video. Bye. Cheers.